Alright guys, how's it going? So I was very glad to hear that undefeated light heavyweight contender and former Olympian Artur Beterbiev is going to be making a comeback in June. I was very glad to hear about this because Beterbiev has been out of the ring since midway through last year. He was starting to drift away into obscurity a little bit, and he's one of the most exciting contenders in the light heavyweight division right now. He's certainly a really good addition to that division. Now, he's going to be fighting a guy now. Sorry if I butcher this guy's name. I'm not 100% how you pronounce it. I believe it's Ezequiel Maderna. Sorry, yeah. Sorry if I butchered his name, but yeah, that's the opponent he's going to be fighting. And to say that this is a comeback, to say that this is, he's been out of the ring for a while. This is a pretty decent opponent. The opponent's 23-2 with 15 knockouts. He's got fairly decent boxing ability. He can punch. The only 2 defeats on his record. One was to Edwin Rodriguez, who went the distance with Andre Ward. So that's not a bad blemish on his record there. And the other one was a controversial split decision defeat to Tommy Oosterhausen over in South Africa, and that was a very close fight. Now, I've seen Oosterhausen fight many times. He's a decent fighter, he's kind of flawed in a way. He doesn't really know how to use his height. He's a big 6'4" southpaw, but he does have a decent jab, and he does move quite well. I remember he fought Brandon Gonzalez and went to a draw, but I personally thought Gonzalez beat him. But Oosterhausen, he's a fairly decent fighter. He's a IBO champion in 2 weights. He's been 12 rounds many times. He's fought people like Aaron Pryor Jr., so he's not a bad fighter, not a bad opponent. So to lose a close split decision in that guy's hometown, I wouldn't really take a defeat like that seriously. So yeah, this guy that Beterbiev's fighting, Maderna, this is a really good opponent. This is a good opponent, especially. It's especially a risk if you're coming off a long layoff where you've been injured. Now, Artur Beterbiev, obviously we don't know if he's going to be the same after these injuries, because he's obviously not been able to do much sparring and training, so in his time off. We don't know if that's affected him, so that's a concern going into this fight. But I hope that Beterbiev wins this fight, and I hope he gets back in the mix, because I'll tell you one thing, guys. I really want to see that Kovalev fight. Artur Beterbiev and Kovalev it'll be a tremendous fight, guys. And those guys, they have history. They fought twice in the amateurs. Beterbiev stopped Kovalev, and he beat Kovalev 1 time on points, and I think he stopped him the other time. So he had 2 victories over Kovalev, and according to reports, there's genuine animosity between those guys. Apparently they really do not like each other, and they've made that perfectly clear in the interviews that I've seen, at least, that they really do not like each other. So that'll be a really good fight. If that fight happened, that'll be a huge rivalry that could take place in Russia, and I look forward to seeing it if it does. So I would like to see Beterbiev win this fight and then get in the mix for a fight with Kovalev. Now, as far as how Beterbiev goes as a fighter, if I was to break him down and talk about his style, he's got that typical Soviet style. He's upright, he's got the tight guard, conventional stance. He's got really, really good punch technique. Obviously, with all the amateur fights that he's had, he's developed that conventional technique really well. But the thing that makes him stand out from most of the guys in that division, and I know there are some big punchers in the light heavyweight division. Obviously, we've got Kovalev, Stevenson, Bramer. All of those guys can punch. But let me tell you right now, none of those guys can punch like this guy, okay? Artur Beterbiev, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful punchers, pound for pound, in boxing. Now, this guy has, and I'm not talking about just, being able to knock an opponent out. I'm talking about raw power, where every single punch has an effect. This guy is a tremendous puncher. Really, really powerful, really, really dangerous. And that obviously comes from his balance. He's very well balanced in the ring, and he knows how to turn over his punches really well. He's just so powerful and so heavy-handed, and that gives him a chance in any fight. Now, I'll give you an example of, the level of fighter that Beterbiev is. in his first 5 professional fights, he fought Tavoris Cloud, who was a former world champion, right, who went the distance with Bernard Hopkins, went 7 rounds with Adonis Stevenson, had just a year prior to that was a world champion. So for him in his first 5 fights to blow a guy like Tavoris Cloud away in 2 rounds, don't tell me that that's not impressive, guys. Okay, that's very impressive. He then went and knocked out Gabriel Campillo, who's a really, really slick boxer, a good southpaw, a lot of skills. Has been in with some good opposition. Gave what's his name? Babet Shumanov. He gave Babet Shumanov 2 great fights. He even got robbed in one of them. He also gave Tavoris Cloud a really good fight. A lot of people thought he won that fight. So Gabriel Campillo was a very commendable victory to fight in your first 6 or 7 fights for Beterbiev. So Beterbiev, he's a guy who's been thrown in the deep end as a professional, and he's prevailed so far. He's knocked everybody out. He's looked very impressive doing it. He hasn't put a foot wrong yet. Now, I know he was knocked down once, so that is a concern. Maybe there's concerns over his chin, but at the end of the day, he got up and he knocked the guy out, and it was more of a balance thing, to be honest. I think he was off balance in that fight, but nonetheless, it is still a concern. We do need to take it into consideration. Obviously, he's not invincible. No fighter is. But, as I said, what's concerning me about this fight is just that we don't know how he's going to be after these injuries. I hope that he's back to his old self. I hope he wins this fight. And I hope to see him fight Kovalev. I really do. I'd love to see that fight. Kovalev obviously is tied up in the Andre Ward situation at the moment because HBO are really, really trying to build up that fight. Ward's going to probably fight a tune-up. Kovalev will probably fight a tune-up as well. Honestly, guys, I would rather see the Kovalev Beterbiev fight than Kovalev Ward. I just think it's so much more significant. I think it's a better fight. I think it's a more explosive fight, and I think it would be a great, really great war if that fight were to happen. But if that fight doesn't happen, there's a chance Beterbiev could get in there with Stevenson, because both guys are with Al Heyman, right? Both guys are based in Canada, so that would be a big fight in Canada. He could fight Adonis Stevenson. Would he beat Adonis Stevenson? I think he, at his best, I think Beterbiev, if he's back to his old self, if he's back on track, I think he'd beat Stevenson. But as I said, we don't know how he's going to be after this layoff and after these injuries, so we'll have to wait and see. But I'm excited to see what he can do. I'll definitely be tuning in to see this fight, and I think he's probably going to win. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. This certainly is a very difficult opponent. This is a guy that's never been stopped before. This is a guy that's been in with some fairly decent names, and he's a really, really good guy to fight, or a really, really risky guy to fight after a layoff. Just put it that way. We'll learn a lot about Beterbiev in this fight. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. I'm out.